There's a person across town from you who earns the same amount you earn. Their job pays roughly what your job pays. Their background is similar to yours. Their starting point was about the same. And by the time they're 65, they will be wealthy. And you, on your current trajectory, won't be. The difference is not their income. The difference is not their luck. The difference is what they do every single day that you don't. 10 small habits. Each one looks insignificant on a given Tuesday. Together, applied across a working lifetime, they produce two completely different financial outcomes from roughly the same raw materials. Here's the truth. I am telling you, wealth and brokenness are mostly habits, not circumstances. You can see this everywhere if you look honestly. The wealthy person earning 90,000, the broke person earning 200. Same year, same economy, same country, wildly different financial reality. The reality came from the habits accumulated daily for decades. You see, most people think wealth is built in big moments, the right job, the right investment, the right break. It's not. Wealth is built in tiny daily decisions that nobody around you sees, that don't feel important at the time you make them, and that compound silently into a completely different financial life by the time you're in your 60s. Listen, today I want to walk you through 10 of those daily habits. Every one of them is a thing you can start tomorrow. None of them require you to earn more than you currently earn. All of them, applied steadily for a decade, separate the people who get to wealth on ordinary incomes from the people who never quite get there, no matter what they earn. By the end of this, you'll know exactly which ones you've been missing and exactly what to start doing differently, starting tomorrow morning. Now, before we get into the 10, you have to understand what your current daily habits are doing to you while they run. Because most people, when they think about money, think about the big things: the salary, the house, the investments. They don't think about the small daily mechanics, and the small daily mechanics are where wealth is actually built or quietly destroyed. Here's the truth. The daily habits that broke people run aren't failures of intelligence. Broke people are not less smart than wealthy people. The habits are failures of inheritance. Nobody taught them. Most people grew up in households where the wealth habits were never modeled. So they grew into adulthood running the broke habits by default, not because they chose them, but because nobody showed them the alternatives. You see, every day you run a broke habit instead of a wealthy one, you're losing ground you can't get back. Not dramatically, just a little. But the daily losses compound over years. After 10 years of running broke habits, you're in a financial position that a wealthy habits person would have escaped a decade ago. After 30 years, the gap is enormous. After 40, it's the difference between retiring with money and retiring with nothing. And here's the part most people don't see. The broke habits feel normal. They feel like just how things are. They feel like what reasonable adults do. Because everybody around the broke person is also running broke habits. So the habits go unquestioned. The result, the slow erosion of any financial security, also goes unquestioned because everybody around them is in the same financial position. You must reckon with this clearly. The daily habits you've been running are not neutral. They are quietly producing the financial outcome you've been getting, and they will produce it for the rest of your life if you don't deliberately replace them. The replacement is not hard. It just requires you to see clearly what the wealthy do every single day that the broke do not, and then to start doing it yourself. 10 habits, each of them small, each of them daily, each of them learnable, none of them dependent on income. 10 things. And hopefully, by the end of today, you'll have a roadmap for the daily mechanics of building wealth on whatever income you have. And the gap between you and the wealthy person across town starts to close, slowly at first, then dramatically from the moment you start running their habits instead of yours. Number one, you must look at your numbers every single morning the way wealthy people do. Not for hours, not in detail. Just a quick check. Account balances, spending so far this month, investment values, bills coming up. The whole picture in about 3 minutes every morning before anything else. You see, broke people start their day by checking the news, the headlines, the latest in politics, sports, weather, gossip. The first input of their day is what's happening in the world that they can't control. The signal that goes into their brain is pay attention to things outside your life. By the time they get to thinking about their own money, hours have passed, and the day has already absorbed most of their attention. Wealthy people do the opposite. The first input of their day is their own financial state, where they stand, what's coming, what needs attention. The signal that goes into their brain is pay attention to your own life. Everything else can wait. Here's the truth. The first thing you look at in the morning sets the frame for the entire day. Look at outside news first. You spend the day in reactive mode. Look at your numbers first. You spend the day in stewardship mode. Stewardship over decades produces wealth. Reactivity over decades produces a permanent feeling of being behind. The 3-minute morning check builds something subtle but powerful. It builds a relationship with your own financial reality. You stop being a stranger to your own money. You know what's happening in real time, all the time. And once you know, you can act on it. You can catch problems early. You can move money where it needs to go. You can adjust spending before the month gets away from you. Most broke people couldn't tell you their account balance within $1,000. They couldn't tell you what they spent yesterday. They couldn't tell you what's hitting their account next week. Their own financial life is opaque to them. And opacity guarantees mismanagement because you can't manage what you don't see. The 3-minute morning check is the daily act that makes your financial life visible to you. The visibility is what allows the management. The management is what builds the wealth. Next, before every single discretionary purchase, you pause for 10 seconds. That's all. Not a long deliberation. Just 10 seconds deliberately taken before any money leaves your account that didn't have to. You see, broke people spend automatically. The card comes out, the transaction happens, the money is gone. No pause, no question. The purchase happens almost without thought, and the cumulative effect over thousands of small purchases a year is a spending pattern that bleeds money the person never decided to spend on things they wouldn't have bought if they had paused. Wealthy people install a small friction. Before they spend, they pause for 10 seconds. They ask themselves a quick question. Do I actually want this? Do I need this? Is this aligned with what I'm trying to build? Sometimes the answer is yes, and they buy. Often in those 10 seconds, the impulse to buy fades, and they don't. Here's the truth. The 10 seconds is the entire technology. The pause defeats most of the spending that broke people do without thinking. Not because the pause produces complicated analysis. It just produces a moment of consciousness and transactions that for most people run on autopilot. The consciousness by itself cancels most of the unnecessary spending. You won't catch every wasteful purchase with the pause. You'll catch a lot of them. Over a year, the savings from the pause are substantial. Over a decade, they fund a meaningful investment portfolio that the no-pause version of you would never have built. This habit is small. So small, you'll be tempted to skip it. Don't skip it. Install it as a permanent rule. Before any spending you didn't plan, you pause for 10 seconds every time, without exception. The exception is what kills the habit. The consistency is what makes the wealth happen. But here's what most people experience after running the 10-second pause for a few months. They notice they've stopped wanting things they used to think they wanted. The pause revealed how many purchases were impulses dressed up as decisions. With the impulses no longer disguised, they buy less, spend less, save more, without ever feeling like they're depriving themselves of anything. Next, you got to change the question you ask about purchases. Broke people ask, what does this cost today? Wealthy people ask, what does this cost me over a year or over a decade? The two questions produce completely different decisions about the same item. You see, the today cost makes everything look cheap. $12 for a meal out, $6 for a coffee, $20 for a subscription. Each of them, on the day, feels small enough not to matter. And so the broke person says yes to each, day after day, without ever calculating what the cumulative cost is. The wealthy person automatically does a different math. The $12 meal 3 times a week is over $1,800 a year. The $6 coffee every workday is over $1,500 a year. The $20 subscription is $240 a year. Each item viewed annually takes on a different weight. Some are still worth it, many are not. Here's the truth. The annual lens is what turns small daily spending into something you can decide about. Without the annual lens, every small purchase looks inconsequential. And the broke person ends up with 1,000 inconsequential purchases that together eat the savings they should have been building. The fix is to install the annual question automatically. Whenever you're about to commit to a recurring expense, daily coffee, weekly meal, monthly subscription, you multiply it out. Multiply by 365 for daily expenses, by 52 for weekly ones, by 12 for monthly ones. The resulting number is the real cost. You must then ask the better question. Is this annual amount worth what I'm getting? Often it's not. Often the convenience of the daily coffee multiplied by a year isn't worth $1,500 to you. When you think about what $1,500 invested for 30 years would become. Sometimes it is worth it. The point isn't to cut everything. The point is to see the real cost, so you can decide which recurring spends are actually serving you. This single shift in how you ask the question changes spending patterns more than almost any other habit. The annual math, applied daily, eliminates a huge percentage of the small recurring expenses that broke people quietly rack up. Next, you have to read something about money every single day, even if just for 15 minutes. An article, a chapter, a blog post, something that's increasing your understanding of how money works, how the wealthy think about it, what mistakes to avoid. 15 minutes a day, every day, without skipping. You see, broke people sit in front of entertainment, hours of it. Their daily reading input is news, sports, gossip, hobbies, fiction. Almost none of it advances their financial knowledge. After 10 years of that input pattern, their financial literacy is roughly where it was a decade ago. Wealthy people read financial material as part of their daily input mix. Not all of it. They read entertainment too. But every day, some financial input lands. Over years, the cumulative learning is substantial. Concepts they didn't know exist. Strategies they would never have figured out on their own. Mistakes they avoid because they read about somebody else making them. Here's the truth. The financial knowledge gap between the wealthy and the broke is enormous. And it's not because the wealthy were taught and the broke weren't. The wealthy keep learning every day throughout their adult lives. The broke stop learning the day school ended. The compounding of the daily learning is what produces the gap, just as much as the compounding of the daily saving does. The fix is simple. You install a 15-minute financial input slot in your day. Morning, evening, lunch break, wherever you can fit it. And during that slot, you're reading or listening to something about money. Not motivational fluff, substantive material. Books about investing, articles about personal finance strategy, case studies of how wealthy people built what they built. You must keep at it. Over a year, you've added 100 hours of financial education to your life. Over 5 years, 500 hours. That's a master's degree worth of focused study, accumulated 15 minutes at a time with no tuition cost. The compounding of that learning shows up in better decisions year after year. And the better decisions show up eventually as wealth. You must keep the slot non-negotiable once you install it, like brushing your teeth, like checking your numbers in the morning. 15 minutes every day on money, forever. The cumulative effect on your financial life is hard to overstate. Next, whether you work for somebody or for yourself, you must learn to think in terms of outcomes rather than hours. Broke people see their work as a function of time. Wealthy people see their work as a function of value produced. The frame difference, run daily, produces different income trajectories. You see, when you think in hours, you're trapped. Hours are finite. There are only 24 in a day, of which maybe 60 are workable. No matter how much you earn per hour, you have a ceiling. Your hourly rate times your hours. And the ceiling is hard. You can't break it through more hours alone. When you think in outcomes, the ceiling lifts. The question becomes not, how many hours can I work, but how much value can I produce? And the answer to that question isn't bounded by your hours. It's bounded by what you can figure out how to do, with leverage, with skill, with systems. Here's the truth. The wealthy person, even when employed, frames their daily work around outcomes. What did I produce today? What value did I add? What problem did I solve? They get paid for the outcomes, formally or informally, more than for the hours. And over years, this orientation produces income that breaks past the hourly ceiling. The broke person frames their daily work around hours. How long did I work today? Did I put in my time? Did I show up? The hours are the metric, and the income tied to hours stays within the hourly ceiling, no matter how hard the person works. You must make the shift from hours to outcomes. It can be made within any job. You start asking yourself, what's the most valuable thing I could produce today? You orient your day around that. You make sure your visible work is connected to outcomes that matter. You document the outcomes you produce, and when raises or promotions or new opportunities come up, you have a record of value produced, not just hours logged. Over a decade of running this orientation, you've become the kind of person whose income is tied to value, which means it can grow in ways The broke person's income, tied to hours, cannot. The frame change is small. The compound effect on lifetime earnings is enormous. Next, you got to automate as much of the wealth building as possible because willpower fails over decades. Automation does not. And the systems that move money into savings and investments automatically, before you have a chance to spend it, are what separate the wealthy from the broke far more than discipline alone ever could. You see, broke people rely on themselves to save. They get paid. They tell themselves they'll move some to savings. Then they spend the month, and at the end, whatever's left goes to savings. Usually nothing's left. The intention was real. The execution failed. Because at the end of the month, the willpower needed to move money out of the account is going up against 30 days of accumulated wants. And the wants almost always win. Wealthy people don't try to save through willpower. They set up automatic transfers. The moment money hits their account, a percentage moves out to savings, to investments, to long-term accounts. By the time they see their balance, the wealth building has already happened. They can't spend what's no longer there. The willpower battle never has to happen because the money was moved before willpower came into play. Here's the truth. The automation removes the daily decision from the equation. Once it's set up, it runs without your involvement. Every paycheck, every month, every year for decades, the wealth building happens in the background of your life while you're doing other things. And by the time you're 65, the automated transfers have accumulated, with compounding into substantial wealth. You must set up the automation. The setup takes one afternoon. You sit down. You decide what percentage of each paycheck goes automatically to savings and investments. You set up the transfer. You forget about it. And you let it run for the next 40 years. That single afternoon done once replaces 40 years of trying to remember to save manually. The replacement is what makes the wealth building actually happen. The broke person, year after year, keeps trying to save through willpower. And year after year, the willpower fails. Not because they're weak, because nobody has the willpower to win that battle day after day for a working lifetime. The automation removes the battle entirely. Next, you must talk about money openly with the right people, even when it feels uncomfortable. Because the silence around money is one of the biggest drivers of financial ignorance in adults. And the wealthy, almost without exception, have learned to talk about money in ways that the broke have not. You see, most people grew up in households where money was not discussed. The amounts, the strategies, the mistakes, the wins. Money was treated as private, almost shameful. And so the person grew into adulthood with no language for discussing money openly, no framework for learning from other people's financial experience, no comfort with the topic at all. The silence, modeled in childhood, persisted into adult life. And the silence is expensive because the things you cannot talk about, you cannot learn from. The wealthy have figured out, privately, mostly, that opening up the conversation about money with the right people produces faster learning than any amount of solo reading ever could. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. He was in his early 30s when I met him. Smart, disciplined, self-taught in many areas. He had read dozens of books about money over the years. He felt reasonably informed, but his actual financial trajectory was almost flat. He was earning more than he had been a decade ago, but his net worth wasn't growing the way the book said it should. He couldn't figure out why. He kept reading more books. The books said the same things. He understood them. He implemented what he could. The implementation didn't seem to be producing the results the books predicted. He happened to be invited into a small group, 6 people. They met monthly. The topic of the meeting was money, their own money, specifically. Income, savings, debts, investments, mistakes, wins, everything on the table, with this group in detail. The first meeting was excruciating for him. He had never said his actual income out loud in a room of peers. He had never named his actual debts. He had never described his actual financial decisions to anybody who could push back on them. He left the meeting feeling exposed and not sure he'd come back. But he did come back. And by the third meeting, something had shifted. He had started learning things he couldn't have learned alone, tax strategies he had never read about, because the books described general principles, but the conversations produced specific applications. Investment options he hadn't known existed, because somebody in the group had used them and shared what worked. Mistakes others had made that he wouldn't have to make himself, because the warning was specific and personal in a way no book could match. Within 6 months, he had made financial decisions that improved his trajectory more than the previous 20 years of solo reading had. He restructured his savings. He shifted his investment strategy. He addressed a debt situation he had been quietly avoiding. None of it was things the books hadn't covered. All of it was things the conversations made actionable in a way the books never had. He told me later, the silence about money was the most expensive habit I ever had. Once I broke it, with the right group of peers, my whole financial life moved. The conversations were the unlock. The books had been giving me information without context. The peers gave me context, without which the information was inert. You must find your group. 3 to 7 people who will talk openly about money. Meet monthly. Put your real numbers on the table. The conversations will produce learning that no amount of solo study ever can. Next, you have to change what you compare your financial life against. Broke people compare what they earn to what other people earn. Wealthy people compare what they earned to what they kept. The two comparisons produce completely different relationships with money. You see, the broke person, looking at their paycheck, immediately compares it to what they think other people make. Their colleagues, their college friends, the people in their neighborhood. The comparison is to a moving external reference. And the reference is usually inflated. They're comparing to the top of what they think others earn, not the average. The comparison makes them feel behind, no matter what they earn. The wealthy person makes a different comparison. They look at what they earned this month and compare it to what they kept. The keep percentage, the gap between income and spending. The actual addition to their wealth this month from this paycheck, that comparison is internal. It's about their own financial trajectory, not somebody else's. Here's the truth. The external comparison is the one that produces the lifestyle inflation. Because if everybody else seems to have more, the broke person feels pressure to spend at the level they imagine others spend. They upgrade things they don't need to upgrade, to keep pace with a reference group they don't actually know the finances of. And the upgrades eat the income, year after year. The internal comparison produces the opposite. The wealthy person doesn't care what their neighbors earn. They care what they kept this month. And the keep percentage is something they can control directly. They can increase it every month through their own choices. The feedback loop is tight, and the feedback is about their own trajectory. not about how they stack up against an imagined external reference. The fix is to redirect your comparing attention. You must look at your own numbers every single month, what you earned, what you kept, what you invested, what you're building. You don't look at what other people earn. You don't look at what other people have. You look at your own trajectory, month over month, year over year. That trajectory is what you're trying to improve. Nothing about anybody else's life is relevant to that improvement. Next, every single day in some small way, you invest in your own tools, your skills, your knowledge, your equipment, your systems. Because the wealthy operate with better tools than the broke, not always more expensive ones, better fitted ones. And the daily investment in tools, compounded over years, is what produces an operating capacity the broke person never builds. You see, broke people often complain about not having the right tools for their work. Their software is outdated. Their setup is inadequate. Their skills are gaps. They notice the gaps. They mention them. They don't close them. The gaps persist for years, quietly limiting what the person can do. Wealthy people approach tools differently. They notice gaps too. But when they notice one, they treat it as something to close, not something to complain about. Daily, weekly, monthly, they're investing in their tools. They take the course. They upgrade the system. They learn the skill. They acquire the equipment. The gaps don't persist because they're actively being closed. Here's the truth. The tools you operate with determine the work you can do. And the work you can do determines the value you can produce. And the value you can produce determines, over time, the income you can earn. The whole chain runs through your tools. Investing in them daily is investing in the upstream variable that produces every other financial outcome. The daily investment doesn't have to be large. 15 minutes learning something, a small purchase that improves your setup, a new system you implement, a skill you practice. Small things accumulated over years become a tool set that the uninvesting person could never assemble. And the assembled tool set produces output year after year that the basic tool set can't. The fix is to install a daily habit of looking at your tools and asking, what's the smallest investment I can make today to improve my operating capacity? You must make that investment today. Today, every day. The investments compound, the capacity grows. And the income that capacity produces grows along with it over a working lifetime into something the no investment version of you would never have reached. Next, you must end every single day with a few minutes of reflection on what happened that day, not with mindless distraction, because the last input of your day shapes how the next day starts. And the broke person's habit of ending each day with hours of entertainment is quietly preventing the kind of learning that compounds into a different life. You see, broke people end their day exhausted, and they reach for whatever distracts them from the exhaustion. Television. Television. Mindless inputs that don't require anything from them. The brain ends the day with a flood of low-value input that crowds out any reflection on what just happened. Wealthy people end the day differently. They take 5 or 10 minutes to reflect what worked today, what didn't, what they want to do differently tomorrow. The reflection is small. It's not a journaling practice. It's just a brief, deliberate look back before the day closes. Here's the truth. The reflection compounds. Over a year, you've spent 30 hours thinking about what's working in your life and what isn't. Over a decade, 300 hours. The accumulated self-knowledge from that practice is what allows you to course correct over time instead of repeating the same patterns indefinitely. The broke person, on the other hand, has spent those 300 hours absorbing entertainment. The entertainment produced nothing. The reflection would have produced gradual improvement, year over year, in how the person was living. The choice between them is the choice between staying the same and slowly getting better. The reflection doesn't have to be elaborate. 5 minutes, 3 questions if you want a structure. What went well today? What didn't? What will I do differently tomorrow? Answer each one in your head, or write a sentence each. The whole thing takes 5 minutes, then close the day. But here's what happens after months of this. You start noticing patterns in your own life that you wouldn't have noticed without the reflection. The decisions that keep working, the mistakes that keep happening, the opportunities you keep missing. The reflection makes the patterns visible. The visibility allows you to act on them. The acting changes your trajectory. Over years, the trajectory change is enormous. From 5 minutes a day at the end of the day, instead of the hours of distraction the broke version of you would have chosen. So here is what I want you to carry with you. 10 daily habits. None of them dramatic, none of them dependent on income, all of them learnable. All of them applied steadily. Separate the people who get to wealth on ordinary incomes from the people who don't. Check your numbers every morning. Pause 10 seconds before spending. Ask what things cost over a year. Read about money 15 minutes a day. Think in outcomes, not hours. Automate the wealth building. Talk about money openly with the right people. Compare what you earned to what you kept, not to what others earn. Invest in your tools daily. End the day with reflection. Every single one of those is something you can start tomorrow. Every single one of those is something a broke person around you isn't doing. And every single one of those, applied for a decade, produces a different financial life than the one your current habits are producing. Here's the truth. I'm telling you, the wealthy aren't smarter than you. They aren't luckier than you. They aren't more talented than you. They just run a different set of daily habits than you do, and the habits compound over decades into the financial outcomes that look from the outside like talent or luck. The habits are learnable. The compounding is mechanical. The wealth is the result. I'm telling you, you can install all 10 of these in the next 30 days. You must pick 3 to start. Run them for a month. Add the next 3. After 2 months, you've got 6 running. After 3 months, all 10. The integration is gradual. The compounding starts the moment you start running them, even if you can't see the compounding yet. And by the time you're 65, the daily habits you installed in your 30s or 40s will have produced a financial position that today would feel impossible to you. Not because anything dramatic happened. Because 10 small daily habits run for 30 or 40 years produce wealth on ordinary incomes that the no habits version of you couldn't have built. Listen, start tomorrow morning with habit 1. Check your numbers, 3 minutes. Then over the next 30 days, install the rest. The wealthy person across town who earns what you earn is already running these. You can run them too. The difference by the end of your working life is the rest of your life.